Get ready, because today we're diving into one of the darkest and most unexpected sides of the celebrity world. Shocking. 10 rich celebrities who ended up poor. Have you ever wondered how it's even possible that stars who once accumulated millions, lived surrounded by luxury, fame, and power, ended up at rock bottom, broke, and unable to even pay their bills? It sounds unbelievable, but it's the shocking truth. Throughout entertainment history, we've seen music legends die buried in massive debt, movie icons who had to take regular jobs just to survive, and even international superstars who lost everything to addictions, gambling, and disastrous business decisions. The most shocking part isn't just that they were once rich, it's how quickly life can turn upside down, even for those who once seemed untouchable. In this video, we're going to expose the most controversial cases, the rise and fall stories Hollywood would rather you forget, and the dark secrets that led idols to end their lives in extreme poverty. You'll hear about massive tax debts, financial betrayals, careers destroyed by bad decisions, and even celebrities who died with nothing after once being worshipped as icons. But before we get into it, I need you to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. This is absolutely crucial, so YouTube understands that our content matters and keeps recommending it to more people. Your subscription is what keeps this channel alive and gives us the motivation to keep bringing you shocking revelations like these. And if you'd like to support us even more, you can send us a super thanks, which is a direct way to help the channel grow. If you can't, no worries, just drop a comment below telling us which story shocked you the most, because your interaction already helps us a lot. And make sure you watch until the very end, because the final revelation will leave you completely stunned and forever change the way you look at celebrities and the fragile empire of money in the entertainment world. 10th. Michael Jackson. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana, to a large working-class family. He was the eighth of 10 children, and from a young age he and his brothers were pushed into the spotlight by their strict father, Joseph Jackson. Michael's childhood was marked by discipline, ambition, and the pressure to succeed. By the time he was a preteen, he was already a polished performer in the Jackson 5. As his solo career exploded in the late 1970s and 1980s, Jackson became a global icon. Thriller, Bad, Dangerous, and his signature dance moves made him the king of pop. But behind the sequins and dancing lights lay a more fragile and tumultuous personal life. Jackson's appearance transformed drastically over the decades, with skin lightening, extensive plastic surgery, and reported health struggles fueling tabloid speculation. Relationships were murky. He was briefly married to Lisa Marie Presley, later to Debbie Rowe, with whom he had 2 children, Prince and Paris, and a third, BG, via surrogate. His personal life also became entangled in waves of allegations of child sexual abuse charges, first made public in 1993. In 2005, he stood trial for further abuse claims and was ultimately acquitted on all counts. But the accusations followed him relentlessly in media and public perception. In his later years, Jackson withdrew from public life, became increasingly reclusive, and turned his gaze toward a big comeback with a concert residency in London. This is it. Financially, however, his empire was crumbling. Court documents revealed that at the time of his death in June 2009, Jackson was over $500 million in debt, long-hidden liabilities, lawsuits, unpaid taxes, and runaway spending had all eaten away at his fortune. He had borrowed against his valuable music catalog, used his assets as collateral, and maintained a lavish lifestyle. Neverland Ranch alone cost millions every year to maintain, despite earning huge sums from record sales, endorsements, and performances. Jackson was spending tens of millions more per year than he earned. His final months included mounting pressure from creditors, lawsuits, and tour expenses. He owed approximately $40 million to the promoter AG. For This Is It Alone. On June 25, 2009, while preparing for his comeback tour, Jackson died of acute propofol intoxication administered by his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, who was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. His death thrust his complicated financial legacy into the spotlight. The contrast is stark. A man who once commanded millions of adoring fans, who donated vast sums to charity over his life, who held outsized cultural influence, yet in death was officially insolvent, drowning in debt. His estate, however, under skilled management, eventually turned around many of the assets and settled many claims, preserving his musical legacy and making posthumous earnings. Jackson's life is a haunting illustration of how fame and fortune can mask fragility, and how even the greatest star can fall into financial ruin. 9th, Marvin Gaye. Marvin Pentz Gay Jr. was born April 2, 1939 in Washington, D.C., to a strict and deeply religious family. He grew up amid emotional turbulence. His father, Marvin Gaye Sr., was a stern minister who physically disciplined his children, while his mother, Alberta, provided the emotional anchor of the household. From an early age, Marvin felt caught between faith and turmoil, a duality that would haunt him. He began performing as a teenager, slowly rising through Motown as a session musician and then solo artist. Behind the scenes, however, he wrestled with inner demons, low self-esteem, depression, drug use, and the trauma of a fraught father-son relationship. In 1963, he married Anna Gordy, sister of Motown founder Berry Gordy, but the union proved stormy and ended in divorce in 1977. He later wed Janice Hunter. Their relationship was intense, open to scandal, and marred by allegations of coercion, abuse, and drug dependency. Janice later claimed that Marvin sometimes pressured her into sexual encounters outside their marriage. Their chemistry fueled some of Gaye's most sensual albums, notably I Want You, but also fueled instability. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Marvin's career was slipping. His bold, deeply personal album Here, My Dear was conceived as a gesture to pay alimony to Anna and turned into a commercial flop. Simultaneously, his financial troubles ballooned. He owed hundreds of thousands, even millions, in alimony, faced crippling IRS debt, and was forced to sell valuable assets. He even negotiated selling the rights to Here, My Dear to his ex-wife as part of the settlement. Desperate, he fled to Europe for a time, hoping escape and reinvention might restore him. During that period, he suffered from paranoia, increasingly erratic behavior, and deepening addiction. His mother remained one of the few stable faces in his life, intervening between Marvin and his father when tensions rose. In his final year, ticket sales faltered, tours lost momentum, and Marvin's physical and mental health were rapidly unraveling. On April 1st, 1984, on the eve of his 45th birthday, the tragic climax occurred. Marvin intervened in a domestic argument between his parents, and his father fatally shot him. Marvin was pronounced dead shortly after arrival at the hospital. His father pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter and received a suspended sentence with probation. At the time of his death, Marvin Gaye was deeply in debt. Reports estimate he owed taxes, alimony, and other obligations totaling around $1.9 million or more, with some claims higher. His lack of a will further complicated his estate, leaving his children and family to wrestle with unresolved financial and legal chaos. Marvin Gaye's life remains one of the starkest examples of a rich celebrity ended poor, a man whose voice and artistry touched millions, yet whose private world crumbled under debt, personal demons, and familial violence. His legacy is bittersweet, celebrated in music, but shadowed by tragedy. 8th, Judy Garland. Judy Garland was born Frances Ethel Gum on June 10, 1922, into a showbiz family in Minnesota, and from almost the beginning her life was shaped by pressure and performance. Her mother, eager and controlling, pushed young Judy into relentless rehearsals, vaudeville acts, and auditions. By her early teens, she had signed with MGM and was already shouldering demands no child should bear. In Hollywood, she was molded into a fragile icon, groomed, criticized, micromanaged, and constantly reminded of her weight and appearance. Behind the scenes, she was deeply insecure, tormented by self-doubt and a need for approval. As she rose to stardom, most famously as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Judy's public image glittered with triumph and warmth, but her private life was riddled with turmoil. At MGM, she was reportedly given diet pills, amphetamines, and sedatives to maintain energy and control her weight systems that would later feed a lifelong battle with substance dependency. Directors and studio executives often clashed with her moods and absences, In 1950, she was officially released from MGM after chronic tardiness and erratic behavior, fueled in part by her emotional instability and substance use. Judy's romantic life was stormy, too. She married 5 times. Her marriages involved power struggles, emotional pain, and financial complexity. With her third husband, Sidney Luft, one of her more stable professional partnerships emerged, and they had a daughter, Liza Minnelli. But constant stress, mounting debts, and personal demons undermined any lasting peace. She also had children Lorna and Joey from other relationships. In those years, Judy attempted suicide more than once, was hospitalized for mental breakdowns, and endured electroshock therapy to control her depression. She was taunted by tabloids and insiders, sometimes booed on stage after missing cues or lapsing into silence. In London, audiences reportedly threw bread and glasses at her for being late to the show. Financially, she was a disaster. Mismanagement, embezzlement by agents, and excessive generosity drained what she earned. Freddie Fields and David Begelman, her agents, allegedly embezzled from her earnings, leaving her owed vast sums in back taxes to the IRS. She was forced to sell her Brentwood home at a fraction of its value and cash in what assets she had. Desperate, she accepted a London concert run to raise funds, leaving her children behind. At one point in the late 1960s, she was nearly homeless, surviving by singing in nightclubs for small pay, deeply in debt and emotionally broken. By 1969, Garland's health had deteriorated severely from liver damage, addiction, respiratory problems, and exhaustion. On June 22nd of that year, at just 47 years old, she died in London from an accidental overdose of barbiturates. The coroner ruled her death in cautious self-overdosage, not suicide. Her funeral in New York drew thousands of mourners, but she left behind a tangled legacy of brilliance and tragedy, of fame squandered and fortunes erased. Judy Garland's life illustrates how even the brightest star can burn out. A woman once adored by millions, undone by the very systems, relationships, and vulnerabilities that had pushed her to the heights of celebrity. 7th. Bela Lugosi. Bela Ferenc Deja Blasco, better known as Bela Lugosi, October 20th, 1882, August 16th, 1956, was born in the Kingdom of Hungary, in what today is Romania, into a family of modest means. From an early age, he showed talent for the stage, and by 1902, he was acting in Hungarian theaters. During World War I, he served as an infantry officer in the Austro-Hungarian army, and after the war, his involvement in leftist politics, including support for the short-lived Hungarian Soviet regime, forced him into exile. He fled to Germany and then eventually made his way to the United States, arriving via New Orleans and entering at Ellis Island. In America, Lugosi's big break came on stage. In 1927, he starred as Count Dracula in a Broadway adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel, and when the show moved to the West Coast, he settled in Hollywood. The 1931 film Dracula, directed by Todd Browning, made him world famous and cemented his identity with the vampire role. But that very success turned into a cage. His thick Hungarian accent and the strong association with Dracula typecast him in horror roles, limiting his chances in other genres. That on the personal front, Lugosi was married 5 times. His first marriage to Ilona Smick ended when political turmoil disrupted his life. Later marriages ended in acrimonious divorces. In 1929, he wed wealthy widow Beatrice Weeks, but the union was short and plagued by accusations. Weeks accused him of infidelity, claimed he attempted to seize her checkbook and safe deposit box, and named star Clara Bow as a rival. That scandal rocked Hollywood social circles. In 1933, Lugosi married Lillian Arch, a much younger woman. They had a son, Bela G. Lugosi, in 1938. The marriage lasted about 20 years, though it was strained by his increasing dependence on alcohol, jealousy, and declining career prospects as Lillian sought work in radio and television. The couple divorced in 1953. Shortly afterward, in 1955, he married his final wife, Hope Lininger, a niece of a Hollywood executive, who remained with him until his death. Behind the scenes, Lugosi struggled for years with chronic pain, especially sciatica, which led to prescriptions of opiates such as morphine and methadone. Over time, he became dependent, a fight that drained his finances and health. In later years, he accepted bit parts in low-budget pictures and even worked with cult director Ed Wood, famously in Glenn or Glenda, 1953, and Bride of the Monster, 1955. In a bid to stay afloat, he often accepted small roles for minimal pay in order to stay visible, but these efforts barely covered his medical costs. Financially, by the time of his death, Lugosi was essentially penniless. At the time of his passing, he reportedly had about $1,900 in his bank account and owned about $1,000 in real estate. His estate's value was minimal, a tragic fall from the heights of stardom. Some sources claim Frank Sinatra quietly contributed to Lugosi's funeral expenses, though others say it was handled by his widow and ex-wife. Lugosi died of a heart attack in his Los Angeles apartment at age 73 on August 16, 1956. He was found in his bedroom. Some accounts romantically claim he died clutching a Dracula script, though that is likely myth. He was buried in his Dracula costume and cape, his family believing it honored his legacy. In controversies and tragedy, Lugosi's life is emblematic of the dramatic fall from fame. He was haunted by addiction, by roles that trapped him in horror, by personal scandals, and by the relentless erosion of his fortune. His final years were lived in obscurity, his name still celebrated by horror fans, yet neglected by the industry that once elevated him. In the context of shocking, rich celebrities who ended up poor, his story stands out as a cautionary tale. The immortal vampire on screen, but a mortal man beneath the cape, undone by pain, costume, and the cruel mercilessness of fame. Sixth, Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney was born Ninian Joseph Yule, Jr. on September 23, 1920, in Brooklyn, New York, the only child of vaudeville performers Joe Yule and Nellie Carter. From virtually infancy, he was thrust into show business. By 17 months, he was already appearing in his parents' act, dressed in tiny costumes and mimicking adult performances. His childhood was steeped in the struggle and spectacle of vaudeville, and his parents separated when he was 4. His mother relocated with him to Hollywood, where he would grow up in the glare of the studios and the pressure of child stardom. Rooney's career exploded early. He appeared in over 300 films over nearly 9 decades, becoming one of the defining faces of MGM and the Andy Hardy series that made him a household name in the 1930s and 1940s. At his peak, he commanded huge salaries and was among Hollywood's top box office stars. But behind that success lay seeds of trouble: poor financial management, multiple marriages, gambling, and a churning personal life that often overshadowed his on-screen triumphs. In his personal life, Rooney was famously married 8 times, with numerous divorces, separations, and reconciliations. The death of his 5th wife, Barbara Ann Thomason, remains one of Hollywood's more chilling scandals. In 1966, she was murdered by her lover, Milos Milos, in a case ruled a murder-suicide, and Rooney's own gun was involved. His family life was fractious. He fathered 9 children and had numerous stepchildren, but was estranged from many of his biological offspring by his final years. Later in life, Rooney became a symbol of a star undone, not by lack of talent, but by betrayal, exploitation, and loss. In the early 2010s, he publicly alleged elder abuse at the hands of his stepson Christopher Aber and Aber's wife Christina. Rooney claimed they withheld food, withheld medicine, controlled finances, and used his accounts for their own benefit. In 2011, he testified before a U.S. Senate Committee on Aging, pleading for awareness of elder exploitation. Legal battles ensued. A court conservator was appointed over his finances. His stepson Mark Aber, who had acted as his caretaker in later years, was accused of converting millions of dollars of Rooney's assets to his own use over a decade. By the time he died on April 6, 2014, Mickey Rooney's estate was valued shockingly at only $18,000, a paltry sum for someone who had earned vast fortunes through decades of work. He also owed back taxes, medical bills, and other debts. After his death, fierce disputes erupted over his body, his will, and his legacy. His many children challenged the will that left his modest estate to a stepson. Vanity Fair described his final years as a dark family war, a feuding family, and a fortune lost. In media retrospectives, He was nicknamed the original Hollywood train wreck, a star whose luminous career masked a tragic, humbling descent. Mickey Rooney's life is an extreme cautionary tale. A man who conquered Hollywood from childhood, yet in age was left betrayed, stripped of fortune, and entangled in legal and familial ruin. His story fits squarely in the tragic roster of rich celebrities who ended up poor. A stark reminder that fame and wealth do not guarantee security, legacy, or dignity in one's final years. Fifth, Corey Haim. Corey Ian Haim was born December 23, 1971, in Toronto, Canada, to Judy and Bernie Haim. From a very young age, he showed talent, and by his early teens, he had broken into films and TV, eventually becoming a teen heartthrob in the 1980s. His breakout roles included Lucas, 1986, License to Drive, 1988, The Lost Boys, 1987, and Dream a Little Dream, 1989. He and his close friend and collaborator Corey Feldman were often called the Two Coreys, a branding that rode high with fans who idolized them throughout their teen years. But behind that bright veneer, Corey's personal life grew darker. He wrestled with substance abuse from his teens onward. He admitted that License to Drive marked a turning point in his spiral. He checked into rehab repeatedly, reportedly over a dozen times, and often oscillated between brief comebacks and deep relapse. In attempts to salvage his image, he released Corey Haim, Me, Myself, and I in 1989, a semi-scripted video diary where he claimed sobriety. But many observers felt it made things worse as monologues seemed disjointed, suggesting he may still have been under the influence. Financially, Corey's troubles piled up. In 1997, he filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, admitting debts of roughly $100,000 to the IRS and listing only minimal assets, a few clothing items, a car valued modestly, and some royalty rights. A stark contrast to the riches he once commanded. His trust in managers and partners backfired. He once entered a lease option deal on a Los Angeles mansion with a promoter who turned out to orchestrate a fraudulent fundraising scheme. His film roles slipped into direct-to-video territory. He was often unreliable on set, and his reputation in Hollywood became increasingly tarnished. Relationships in his life were also stormy. He had a long, tumultuous romance with actress Nicole Eggert in the early 1990s. Eggert later revealed that she witnessed his drug struggles up close, sometimes rushing him to hospitals during crises. He also had earlier ties with Alyssa Milano and Lala Sloatman, and later brief engagements and relationships with other actresses and models, though none seemed to stabilize his life. One of the most controversial aspects of Haim's legacy involves allegations of sexual abuse. In the 2020 documentary My Truth, The Rape of Two Coreys, Corey Feldman claimed that Haim had been sexually abused as a young teenager on the set of Lucas by Charlie Sheen, then 19, while Haim was just 13, and by other industry figures. These claims stirred outrage and denial. Sheen vehemently denied them, and Haim's mother publicly called the allegations a scam. The issue remains deeply contested and adds a haunting layer to Haim's story, with many believing that abuse played a role in derailing his promise. In his final years, Haim's life was a tragedy. By the late 2000s, he was reportedly homeless, relying on friends and acquaintances to shelter him. In 2006, he starred in The Two Coreys, a reality show with Feldman documenting his attempt to rebuild, but much of it exposed his physical decline, relapse, and broken spirit. On March 10, 2010, Haim died in his Burbank apartment after flu-like symptoms turned into pneumonia. The autopsy later ruled his death natural, citing respiratory failure, cardiomyopathy, and other contributing conditions. No significant illegal drugs were found in his system, though he had reportedly acquired hundreds of prescription pills via doctor shopping in the month before his death. Corey Haim's life resembles a cautionary tale. He rose fast, became adored, but personal demons, financial mismanagement, addiction, and possibly abuse combined to erode everything he once had. In many ways, his final years confirmed the bitter truth behind Shocking. 10 rich celebrities who ended up poor. Fame can vanish, fortunes can disappear, and some fallen stars are left with nothing but regret and heartbreak. Fourth, Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake was born Constance Frances Marie Ockelman on November 14, 1922, in Brooklyn, New York, and rose to dazzling fame in the 1940s thanks to her trademark peekaboo hairstyle and seductive femme fatale roles in film noir alongside stars like Alan Ladd. Yet beneath the glamour lay a life marked by turmoil, heartbreak, addictions, and financial ruin that would become a tragic emblem of fame's fragility. Her childhood was troubled. Her father died in an oil tanker explosion when she was young, and her mother later remarried. Lake later claimed she was diagnosed with schizophrenia in adolescence, and she projected an image of perfection even while hiding inner struggles. Her first marriage was to art director John Deadly in 1940. They had 2 children, but the union dissolved quickly. She then married director André de Toth in 1944. They had 2 children together, but the marriage also soured. During her marriage to de Toth, she even purchased a plane, earned her pilot's license, and once used it to fly solo from Los Angeles to New York in a dramatic escape symbolic of both her ambition and restlessness. As her personal life became increasingly chaotic, her reputation on set suffered. Colleagues called her difficult, and there were reports of clashes with co-stars and directors. One infamous controversy involved her hiding a pregnancy during filming Sullivan's Travels, which enraged director Preston Sturges and contributed to tensions behind the scenes. At the same time, Lake's image was manipulated. She was pressured to change her iconic hairstyle during World War II to prevent factory accidents among women whose hair looked like hers, a symbolic sacrifice of her brand. By the late 1940s, her once stellar box office appeal began to fade. Paramount refused to renew her contract, and a series of box office flops and career missteps followed. Financial distress piled on. In 1951, the IRS seized her home over unpaid taxes, and she and de Toth filed for bankruptcy. After the collapse of her marriage to de Toth, she drifted between cheap hotels, struggled with alcoholism, and was arrested a few times for public drunkenness. At one point in 1962, a New York Post reporter found her working undercover as a cocktail waitress under a pseudonym in Manhattan's Martha Washington Hotel, an image far removed from her Hollywood stardom. Fans reportedly sent her money, though she returned much of it, insisting she wasn't destitute even as signs of ruin were everywhere. Over the years, her attempts at comebacks on stage in England, guest TV roles, and publishing her memoir Veronica, the autobiography of Veronica Lake, in 1969 offered flickers of hope, but never true restoration. By 1970, she starred in a low-budget horror film Flesh Feast, her final screen appearance. Her health, ravaged by years of heavy drinking, declined sharply. In June 1973, she was admitted to hospital with stomach pains and diagnosed with cirrhosis. Soon acute hepatitis and renal failure followed. On July 7, 1973, Veronica Lake died alone and in dire financial straits in Burlington, Vermont, at age 50. Her funeral was sparsely attended. She was cremated, and her ashes remained unclaimed for years due to unpaid funeral bills. In a tragic twist, years later some of her ashes were discovered in a New York antique store. Veronica Lake's life remains a haunting tale, a woman who once reigned at the height of Hollywood glamour, but whose personal demons, mismanagement, and the brutal structures of stardom led to a shocking fall into obscurity, addiction, sorrow, and poverty. In the pantheon of rich celebs who ended up poor, her story remains one of the most poignant and chilling. Third, Omar Sharif. Omar Sharif was born on April 10, 1932 in Alexandria, Egypt under the name Michel Youssef Dimitri Chalhoub, into a well-connected Melkite Greek Catholic family with roots in Lebanon and Syria. His mother, Claire Sada, was a prominent socialite whose salon entertained Egypt's elite, including King Farouk, giving young Omar early exposure to the world of influence and opulence. As a youth, he attended the English-style Victoria College in Alexandria, became fluent in multiple languages, and later earned a degree in mathematics and physics from Cairo University before entering show business. He got a start in Egyptian cinema in the 1950s, and after being cast by director Youssef Chahine, he adopted the stage name Omar Sharif. In 1955, he converted to Islam and legally changed his name so he could marry the celebrated actress Fatin Hamama. Their union elevated his fame in the Arab world, and they had a son, Tariq. in 1957. Over time, tensions began to build in their relationship. His international career meant extended periods abroad, while Egypt's travel restrictions under Nasser complicated his movements. They separated by 1966 and divorced in 1974. Throughout his movie career, Sharif achieved global stardom. His performance in Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, as Sharif Ali earned him an Oscar nomination, and his lead in Dr. Zhivago, 1965, won him a Golden Globe. But along with cinematic acclaim came controversies. Casting debates over roles like Nikki Arnstein in Funny Girl and Che Guevara in Che sometimes drew criticism and underscored the complexity of racial and ethnic representation in Hollywood. Beneath the glamour, Sharif harbored a compulsive passion for gambling. Reports say he once gambled away his Paris apartment and called his agent begging, "Find me any trash, I need money." He later admitted to financial ruin driven by losses at casinos, bad bets, and an extravagant lifestyle. To stay afloat, he accepted roles in films he often described as rubbish, taking parts he wouldn't otherwise consider merely to bail himself out. His love of bridge also became both refuge and further financial strain. He organized the Omar Sharif Bridge Circus, toured exhibitions, and wagered heavily on cards, but even that, at times, proved more cost than benefit. In the 1990s and 2000s, his film roles waned. After the commercial failure of The 13th Warrior, he publicly rejected making formulaic films just for paycheck and temporarily retreated from the screen. His comeback came with Monsieur Ibrahim, 2003, which earned him critical acclaim and a César Award, but by then the trajectory of his wealth had already been eroded. Health issues added further hardship. Sharif underwent coronary bypass surgery in 1992, quit smoking, and in later years developed Alzheimer's disease. He passed away on July 10, 2015, in Cairo, from a heart attack at age 83. Though his legacy as a bridge-crossing star remains powerful, his personal arc also reveals how fame, compulsions, and financial missteps cast a long shadow over even the most luminous career. Second, Anita Ekberg. Kirsten Anita Marianne Ekberg was born on September 29, 1931 in Malmö, Sweden, the sixth of 8 children, and she grew up in modest circumstances before her mother encouraged her into beauty pageants, leading her to win Miss Sweden in 1951 and eventually a contract with Universal Studios in Hollywood. She arrived in the United States with a striking figure and bold confidence, modeling for men's magazines and making small film appearances, but her path to stardom was marked by both ambition and scandal. In Hollywood, she adopted the glamorous persona, but she also became known for her outspoken nature. For instance, years later she famously insisted publicly that it was she who made director Fellini famous, rather than the opposite. Her personal life was turbulent and full of high-profile liaisons and failed marriages. She married British actor Anthony Steele in 1956, divorcing in 1959, then married American actor Rick Van Nutter in 1963, divorcing him in 1975. Although she often expressed a desire for children, she never had any. One of the most significant romantic relationships of her life was with the Italian industrialist Gianni Agnelli, owner of Fiat. Despite their relationship spanning years, it remained extramarital and unfulfilled, and she later admitted regret over not having children with him. Ekberg's life was also peppered with sensational episodes. In 1960, paparazzi followed her home from a nightclub, and she allegedly kneed one photographer in the groin, even brandishing a bow and arrow to threaten others. Some reports say she actually shot arrows. She once admitted that an incident where her dress accidentally burst open in a hotel lobby had been orchestrated with a photographer, a publicity stunt. Over time, as her acting offers diminished, she remained haunted by the image of her youthful glamour, complaining that after La Dolce Vita producers only wanted her to replicate that same persona. Later in life, her descent into financial hardship and physical decline became public. After breaking her hip, reportedly knocked down by one of her Great Danes, she ended up wheelchair-bound for years. In 2011, it was reported that she was destitute after spending months in a hospital with a hip fracture. During that time, her villa was burglarized and badly damaged by fire, and she even sought help from the Fellini Foundation. Her requests for public assistance were reportedly denied on the basis that as a non-Italian citizen, she was not eligible for certain social supports. In her final years, she lived in a care facility near Rome, largely isolated, physically frail, and overshadowed by her former legend. She died on January 11, 2015 at age 83 in a clinic near Rome of complications from chronic illnesses. Anita Ekberg's life is a haunting embodiment of the tragedy behind rich celebrities who ended up poor, a shimmering icon reduced by age, misfortune, physical injury, failed alliances, and financial neglect. In the end, she was remembered less for her final struggles than for that unforgettable silhouette in the Trevi Fountain, even as the man behind the public facade slipped away into obscurity and poverty. First, Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday was born Eleanora Fagan on April 7, 1915, into a life of hardship, abandonment, and painful compromises. Her mother, Sadie Fagan, was a teenager when she had Zilly, and her father, often named as Clarence Holiday or sometimes Frank DeVries, largely disappeared from her life. Growing up in poverty, she was exposed early to trauma. She suffered sexual abuse, was sent to reformatories for truancy, and drifted through unstable households. By her teens, Billie was singing for tips, hustling and finding whatever work she could to survive. In her personal life, Billie experienced a string of abusive, destructive relationships and battled addiction for most of her adult life. She married trumpeter Jimmy Monroe in 1941, and the marriage eventually failed, and later married Louis McKay in 1951, a man whose financial mismanagement reportedly drained much of her savings. As her drug habit deepened, she was arrested on narcotics charges multiple times, most infamously in 1947, losing critical rights such as her New York cabaret card, which barred her from performing in many clubs. One of her career's boldest, most controversial acts was singing Strange Fruit, a searing protest against lynching in the American South. That performance drew fierce backlash, and Billie became a target of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Narcotics, FBN, under Harry Anslinger, who many historians believe persecuted her aggressively. Some accuse that agents even planted drugs in her hotel rooms to trap her. In one dramatic example, she was arrested in a hospital room while ill, her methadone treatment abruptly halted by Anslinger's orders. Despite her iconic status and undeniable talent, Billie's finances grew increasingly dire. Her voice, once sharp and youthful, became worn and labored under years of substance abuse. Her later years were marked by poverty, poor health, and desperation. She lived with minimal means, and in some accounts died with as little as 70 cents in a bank account and perhaps $750 in cash. On July 17, 1959, Billie Holiday passed away in New York at age 44, suffering from heart disease, liver failure, and complications of her drug use, and all while under police custody in a hospital. Her funeral drew thousands, but she left behind a tragic paradox: a woman of immense artistic legacy who, in her final days, was essentially broke and vulnerable. Billie Holiday's life reminds us that behind theatrical glamour and public acclaim can lie pain, exploitation, tragedy, and a hard fall from wealth to ruin. And now that you've seen how these 15 rich and powerful celebrities went from unimaginable wealth to shocking poverty, the question that remains is, how does someone go from luxury mansions, private jets, and red carpets to empty pockets, unpaid debts, and total ruin? The truth is darker than it seems. Fame doesn't protect anyone from greed, manipulation, or self-destruction. Behind the glamorous smiles and the flashing lights, there are stories of betrayal, addiction, fraud, toxic relationships, and reckless spending that destroyed entire fortunes. Some were victims of deceitful managers, others were devoured by fame itself, and a few simply couldn't handle the pressure of living under the spotlight. Each downfall hides a lesson that money and fame can vanish in a heartbeat, and that even the richest stars can end up fighting the same demons as anyone else. The shocking truth is that Hollywood has as many broken dreams as it has success stories, and sometimes the biggest stars fall the hardest. But before you leave, I need to remind you, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a big thumbs up. Your support tells YouTube that our content deserves to reach more people, and it's what keeps this channel alive. Without your subscription, the algorithm simply buries our work, no matter how much effort we put into uncovering these untold truths. And if you want to help us even more, you can click the Super Thanks button below. It's a small way to contribute financially and help us keep producing deep, high-quality stories like this one. But if you can't, that's totally fine. Just comment below and tell us which stories shock you the most, which celebrity's downfall you never expected to see. Every comment, every like, every share means the world to us and helps this community grow. And remember, don't stop watching yet, because the next video will reveal an even more unbelievable story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about fame.